Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome tonight to the race preview for, of course, tomorrow's 2021 Monaco Grand Prix after what was today a pretty exciting session, a very surprising session, and we have a grid that is the most exciting grid we've had so far this season, without doubt. It's the whole pecking order has really been turned on its head, you have to say, from the last few races. It's just absolutely incredible, the grid we have for the Grand Prix tomorrow. What I'm going to be doing tonight is taking you through, of course, what happened today, but also giving my thoughts and analysis as to what will happen tomorrow, most likely for the teams and drivers. Hopefully you guys are doing well after Monaco Grand Prix qualifying earlier, which of course finished about 3 hours ago. Yeah, hopefully tonight you'll preview with me this Grand Prix tomorrow, which, I mean, of course, it's not going to feature really any overtaking, but it's going to be a close race. I think definitely on strategy, it's going to be a very closely fought battle. Closely fought battle. So yeah, I think we're definitely in still for an interesting Grand Prix. I don't think it's just going to be, you know, Abu Dhabi 2020 type of bad race. I don't think that at all. And, you know, at Monaco, no matter what era, it's never been easy at all to overtake, or easier to overtake at Monaco. So, yeah, we know what this Grand Prix is most likely going to be, but I still think we're going to have a very competitive race, especially towards the front of the field. Now, as you can see, the left-hand side, that is the grid at the minute for tomorrow's Grand Prix. Now, let's also show the lap times. So, at the minute, Charles Leclerc is on pole position for his home race, the Monaco Grand Prix. What a result for him. I say at the minute because there is still things to be decided. Not in terms of penalties or anything, but whether Leclerc's car is okay enough to go into the race without penalty. Verstappen was, of course, second, about a quarter of a second away from Charles Leclerc. Valtteri Bottas third, Carlos Sainz fourth, and then Norris fifth, Gasly sixth, Lewis Hamilton P7 at Monaco. That's his worst qualifying performance since 2011, I think, where he qualified in ninth. So yeah, Lewis Hamilton having an awful day, and really for the championship, if Verstappen tomorrow can strike, with a good finish and a good amount of points compared to what Hamilton gets, Verstappen really could reverse the momentum in the championship battle and could strike a very important blow against Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. And then after that is Sebastian Vettel in 8th, Perez 9th, and Giovinazzi 10th. And then the rest of the field is Ocon, Ricciardo, Stroll, Raikkonen, Russell, Tsunoda, Alonso, Latifi, Mazepin, and of course Mick Schumacher did not do a lap time because he didn't do qualifying because of the bad damage he had from his crash in practice 3. Let's get into the teams, and of course we'll start first with the world champions. Now, I think Valtteri Bottas should be very happy with his performance because to out-qualify Lewis Hamilton at Monaco is a great achievement. It really is. I mean, if you look at since Lewis Hamilton came to Formula 1, maybe except for one race, I think in 2009, where Heikki Kovalainen, if I can pronounce it right, when he out-qualified Hamilton, he didn't actually go on to get a good result. But if you look at all the other drivers that have out-qualified Hamilton at Monaco when they were his teammate, they've tended to go on and get a very good result, such as Alonso winning in 2007, 2011, Jenson Button finished in 3rd place. He outqualified Hamilton. 2013 and 2014, Rosberg outqualified Hamilton and won both races. 2016, not so much for Rosberg, where he outqualified Hamilton there, but ended up finishing quite a bit further behind. Bottas finished, I think, 4th in 2017. And then here, of course, Bottas is 3rd. So, you know, outqualifying Lewis Hamilton around the streets of Monte Carlo, if you're his teammate, I mean, it does tend to lead to a very good result because Lewis Hamilton normally is at the sharp end of the grid. Now, Bottas is 3rd, which is, you know, of course, not pole position or anything. I mean, if you're going to out-qualify Lewis Hamilton, you would think you would end up being on pole position or 2nd place at worst. But of course, with the lack of pace that Mercedes had today, That just wasn't the case. And I have to say, I'm very surprised that Mercedes were so slow. Very surprised. After the Spanish Grand Prix and the Portuguese Grand Prix and how they were strong at those tracks in, say the second and third sector, for example, at the Circuit de Catalunya, where it's very tight and twisty, kind of like Monaco. Again, I was very surprised that they were so slow here today in Monaco. And we'll get into the sector times later on and look at just where it went wrong for them. But yeah, very surprised they were so slow. But for Valtteri Bottas, I think third qualifying in that position, I mean, that's, I think, the best he probably could have done. If there was a final run that was got in by the drivers, he might not have actually finished there, because Carlos Sainz, who of course was in fourth, he probably could have improved from fourth place, because he had very good speed during the session to Carlos Sainz. I think he was P1 at the end of one of the sessions, or very close to P1 at the end of one of the sessions. But yeah, good result for Valtteri Bottas, without doubt. Very, very good result. And I think, really, if he doesn't lose position at the start, I mean, I can't really see him dropping, behind Sainz. Mercedes do tend to have the best race pace in Formula 1. They've had that really for the last 2 or 3 years. So, yeah, as long as Bottas gets away fine, I think he will get the podium. And, I mean, Bottas is not really in the championship fight. Because, I mean, if you look at the races so far, Bahrain, he finished behind both Max and Lewis. Imola didn't score. Portugal finished behind both Max and Lewis. Same in Spain. But, here, I mean, maybe he could get a bit closer to, say, Lewis Hamilton in the championship if he could get a podium. Because Lewis Hamilton, who we'll get into now, Lewis Hamilton's not going to finish on the podium tomorrow unless the cars ahead of him really have a massive problem occur during the race because of, I don't know, a safety car coming out at the wrong time, or they get caught up in an accident. Lewis Hamilton is not finishing on the podium tomorrow. Absolutely no chance. Starting in 7th place, it's not like he's on a harder compound of tyre and his race will evolve. It won't. Lewis Hamilton's not finishing on the podium. Just not happening. The top 4 on the grid, I mean, Norris and Gasly were very good today and they were quick, but Norris and Gasly are not going to be, I think, in the race quite as quick as the front 4. Ferrari, I think, will have a better race pace because they're just better around this circuit. Verstappen, of course, will have a better race pace because of the Red Bull and because, well, he's Max Verstappen. And, of course, Valtteri Bottas will have a better race pace because he's in a Mercedes, and the race pace, like I said, from Mercedes does tend to be best in Formula 1. For Hamilton, unless he makes a position or 2 at the start, what's going to happen is the front 4 will really, over the course of the Grand Prix, the front 4 compared to, say, Norris and Gasly, are just going to pull away. Because, again, they just are quicker than the McLaren car and the AlphaTauri. The McLaren, of course, has very good race pace, but just around this circuit, the Ferrari is clearly quicker. And I don't see McLaren being massively quicker in the race to the point where they can actually be as quick as them. I just don't see it. So what's going to happen is Lewis Hamilton is going to spend the first stint of the race tomorrow held up by Norris and Gasly. That's what's going to happen. And the first stint of the race tomorrow could go on for a very long time. Lando Norris and Pierre Gasly are not going to pit, after 10, 15 laps. That's not going to happen because they know if they can't come out in clean air, then there's no point, making a pit stop. So Hamilton, again, podium, no way. No way at all. By the time he, let's say, well, most likely the way he'll get past Norris and Gasly, if he does, is Norris and Gasly will pit, and then Lewis will do an overcut, go a few laps longer, nail in some good laps, and then come out ahead of them. That's how it will probably happen, which he did, I think, in 2017 when he started low down. So, again, that's probably what's going to happen there. But by the time Norris and Gasly pit, Lewis Hamilton would have already lost so much time to the front four. He'll probably be a pit stop behind a podium, the podium finishers at that point by the time Norris and Gasly pit, because he'll be losing, to Leclerc and Verstappen, he'll be losing at least a second a lap, at least. So if Norris and Gasly go 20 seconds, if they go 20 laps into the race, which I think they will, I think Norris and Gasly are more likely to do 25, 30 laps, then Hamilton's going to be nowhere near the front two, and probably his teammate either. So yeah, Hamilton, no chance of a podium. I think the best he can do is 5th. That would be, considering his starting position, that would be a good result. Gotta say though, the Mercedes car's not been quite at it this weekend, but Lewis Hamilton today was poor. He was poor. By his standard, and it is very high, I understand that, it is very high, but it's the standard that he has set himself. He was poor today. He should have been ahead of Valtteri Bottas. He should be up in 3rd place. At least, if he was in 3rd place, even though the Mercedes is, I don't think, as quick as, say, the Ferrari or, by the looks of it, the Red Bull even this weekend, at least then, he would still be in a position to still score plenty of points. And let's say he did lose points to Verstappen, it wouldn't be anything massive to worry about. If it finishes the race tomorrow the way qualifying has finished, then Hamilton's going to lose 12 points, and he only leads by 14. So, yeah, Lewis Hamilton's in trouble in terms of the championship a bit here, because, he's built the momentum up a bit, of course, but if Verstappen can, of course, finish the race and finish in 2nd place and Hamilton can't make up any ground, then Max is going to definitely, from this race on, probably for a few races, if Max can really cut mistakes out and Red Bull can cut mistakes out and they can, be at their absolute strongest, Max is probably going to have quite a good run of form in the next few races, because the tracks that are coming up suit the Red Bull more than the Mercedes car. So, yeah, I think Hamilton really had to nail his championship lead home, kind of, if you know what I mean, this weekend. But he's not going to be able to do that. So, yeah, Mercedes, not in a good way at all. And the best they can do probably is 3rd and 5th, probably, which is not great for them. I think they got that result in 2018. And, of course, later in the season, they still, were pretty successful. And I'm not saying, by the way, if Lewis Hamilton finishes 7th, Verstappen finishes 2nd, I'm not saying Lewis Hamilton is going to lose the championship, but because of the momentum he built up, coming to a racetrack which, of course, Hamilton last won at, and where I thought the Mercedes car was going to be a bit stronger, I thought Hamilton would still have enough to continue that momentum. But if Verstappen can finish the race tomorrow where he is, if not better, then that's a massive momentum swing towards Max Verstappen. In my mind, I still think Lewis Hamilton is going to win the championship because, he is the best I've ever seen and is still at his peak. But, it's not absolute certainty that Lewis Hamilton is going to win the championship. And Verstappen, if Verstappen can win tomorrow, then Verstappen probably would take the lead of the championship, unless Hamilton can get in the top 4 on the in the finishing race results. So yeah, today's definitely been a big day, I think, for the championship. As long as Max Verstappen finishes the race at least where he is, I think this is a big momentum swing for Max Verstappen, because again, the tracks coming up after Monaco, say the next 5 tracks, I'd say almost all of them are going to suit the Red Bull car more than the Mercedes car. So, it's going to be very interesting to see what follows this Grand Prix and what happens in the Grand Prix tomorrow, of course. For Red Bull, I would say it's been, with Verstappen, I wouldn't say it's been a bad day. I don't think you can call it a bad day. Yeah, he could have got pole position, and he was actually quite a bit up on his previous best lap before Leclerc caused the red flag. So he probably would have got pole position today if it had not been for that. But considering where Lewis Hamilton is, 7th place, you've got to give credit to Max Verstappen, for keeping it on the island, for keeping it, cool and calm, because he could have easily thrown it in the barriers himself. And his pace was still very good. And I still don't think the Red Bull car is, around a track like this, is, say, especially great. Again, I think Baku, Red Bull as a team will just be stronger there, because I think the Baku track layout suits the Red Bull car better. But yeah, I think, despite him not getting pole, the point I'm trying to make is, despite him not getting pole, his result is still good. And it still keeps him very much in play. And we know, Ferrari can crack under pressure sometimes. We know that. We know that their strategy, so far this season, their strategic decisions have been fine. But we know when they've been fighting at the front of the field against the real top dogs that it can falter sometimes. So he's not absolutely out of, contention for victory. So even though, again, he'll be disappointed with second on the grid, I think it's still a good result for Max Verstappen, considering where Lewis Hamilton is. And as long as he could finish the race tomorrow in 2nd place or 1st place, with Hamilton, say, if Hamilton finishes where he's going to start, or it finishes in 5th or 6th, then, going into Baku, the momentum is going to then swing probably a lot more towards Max Verstappen, now that Verstappen has, in the last couple races, cut the mistakes out, and that the Red Bull car is going to probably be stronger going into the next month or so of racing, or month and a half so of racing. So, yeah, I think Max has just got to, even if he doesn't win tomorrow, he doesn't necessarily need to win the race. Just, if he finishes second, he finishes second. Just got to make sure he takes, the points out of Hamilton's lead. Again, Hamilton has a 14-point lead, so if Verstappen can finish in second, and unless Hamilton finishes in 4th place, then Verstappen is going to take quite a bit out of his championship lead. For Sergio Perez, down in 9th, poor, very poor. Perez, really, considering Hamilton was down where he was, and where his teammate was and how the Red Bull car looked, Perez should have been P5 on the grid. He was actually, I believe on his final lap, he was possibly going to go around 4th or 5th on the grid. So he was, to be fair to him, on a lap that was going to do that for him. But he should have showed that pace earlier. You can't, especially around a street circuit, you can't just rely on, a red flag or a yellow flag situation not happening so you can get your lap in and get where you want to be. You've got to, around street circuits, you'll notice that the people who tend to do well are setting lap times that are consistently right up there. They're not just hovering nowhere and then suddenly they'll jump up. They tend to be right in the ballpark all of the time, which is what Leclerc, Verstappen, and I'd say Sainz have been doing basically this entire weekend. So I think Perez just failed to get it together soon enough, really, which is disappointing. And Perez, I think because of Perez's great time management, I think Sergio Perez might actually be not too far away from Lewis Hamilton, to be honest, at the end of the Grand Prix. I think he'll probably finish behind Lewis Hamilton, but yeah, Perez I don't see having a great result, really. But Red Bull, considering where Hamilton and Bottas is, and where Verstappen is and all, I think it's been a good day. Not a great day, but a good day. For this team, though, the Scuderia Ferrari team, what a day. What a day. First pole position in a year and a half since, I think, Halloween 2019. And you'd have to say, with Charles Leclerc on pole position, a guy who's been driving amazingly well in the last year or so, quite frankly, that really, I think we're looking, as long as he doesn't have a gearbox penalty for his accident at the end of qualifying, which, to be honest, I don't think he will. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a gearbox penalty, but I don't think he will because his car didn't really go in a manner that was like side hitting or, you know, the rear going in first, which normally is a classic, you know, you need to get a new gearbox in the car. It was more of a frontward crash, if you know what I mean. So I think he'll be fine. And to be honest, I hope he'll be fine because this man deserves to win this race. He's been great all weekend. In practice too, for example, on Thursday, he was head and shoulders above everyone. He was so good. I mean, of course, he was P1, so he was literally head and shoulders above everyone. But, you know, eliminate the car differences even. He was absolutely right there and has been the whole weekend. So he thoroughly deserves pole position. And like I said, for the last year and a half, Charles Leclerc has been right up there in terms of performance, I think, with Hamilton and Verstappen. I don't think he is as good as Verstappen and Hamilton still, because I haven't seen quite enough to put him ahead of those two. But he's been very close. Very close. And like I said, the way he's performed this weekend, he thoroughly deserves pole position to Charles Leclerc. And I think, as long as he doesn't have a penalty, I think Charles Leclerc will win the race tomorrow. And I think he deserves to win the race because it's been so great. It's been just so great. And it would be, of course, his third Grand Prix win in, the last year and a half. Of course, he won back-to-back races at Spa and Monza, did Leclerc in 2019 for Ferrari. And, of course, if Ferrari did win, it'd be their first win since Singapore in 2019. That Grand Prix, of course, Sebastian Vettel winning. But, yeah, Charles Leclerc, I think, as long as he gets the start right, he'll be fine. I know in terms of race pace, maybe Ferrari are not, you know, amazingly strong in that aspect, but I don't think Red Bull are either. Because if you look at the races so far, Max Verstappen does tend in the Red Bull to be at his absolute quickest in qualifying. In the races, I don't think the Red Bull car is as quick as it is in qualifying. So I think Leclerc will be fine, honestly. And for Carlos Sainz in fourth, I think he'll be disappointed because he looked as though he could probably get onto the front row even, but at least into the top three. And of course, he's P4 now. He could easily pass Bottas on the first lap. I mean, last Monaco Grand Prix that he was racing, with McLaren, he overtook two people, around the outside of Casino Square on the first lap. So we know he can overtake on the first lap, Carlos Sainz. So, you know, we could absolutely see two Ferraris tomorrow on the podium. Is it likely two Ferraris on the podium? Probably not. But I think also considering the way Sainz has performed, I think he would deserve, to be in there. But yeah, Charles Leclerc, obviously the man of the moment, and I hope, honestly, that he can get what he deserves tomorrow, which is the race win. He deserves, for me, if you look at the weekend so far and just how it's gone, Charles Leclerc's been the best driver so far this weekend. So, and I think deserves to win the Grand Prix. Of course, the race will not be easy. Verstappen is not just going to go away. Verstappen will be on his tail for probably the entire race. I don't think Charles Leclerc is just going to run off into the distance. But again, considering the weekend he's had and considering how important pole position is, and he's, absolutely nailed it when it came to that, he really does deserve, for me, getting that victory. Of course, if Verstappen can get him at turn one and Verstappen runs away with it, then of course Max, would deserve the victory as well. Max has also been very good this weekend, but just the way Charles Leclerc's been this weekend, I really am hoping that he can get what he deserves, which is a victory for the Scuderia. And finally, before we go on to the sector times, we'll get into McLaren, who, with Daniel Ricciardo first up, who yet again, as Nib thankfully told me in a message after qualifying, Daniel Ricciardo yet again missed the checkered flag. He also did that in Spain, despite in Spain qualifying, I think, up in 7th place. So, yeah, not good for him. And obviously, his grid position, very poor. P12. He should have been, considering what happened in Q3, he should have been, say, 7th or 8th, considering what happened to Lewis Hamilton, where his teammate was, and how close the McLaren was in the end to the front of the field. So yeah, I'd say 7th or 8th is where he should have been, and he's P12. I think he will score points tomorrow. 1 or 2 maybe, but his weekend's over, isn't it, Ricciardo? Unless something mad happens, what is he actually going to do? You can't overtake here, so he can't rely on that. Like I said, his weekend's basically over. You know, so what if he nicks a point or two? To him, it's not going to feel like anything, because he expects here to be, saying the type of car he's in, considering how quick it is compared to the Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull right now. He was probably expecting to be in the top 7, 8 on the grid. And he's, you know, around the Alfa Romeos, the Aston Martins, even the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. Just simply not good enough. I know he's, you know, still getting used to things at McLaren and, you know, all of that. But still not good enough. His pace, simply not good enough. Lando Norris, though, was great. Lando Norris did everything he needed to do, which was really, in terms of the midfield pack, the only thing he could really do today was be the best of the rest after the 2 Ferraris. Of course, we didn't expect Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez to be in the positions they are going to be in for the Grand Prix, so that is a surprise. But again, after the 2 Ferraris, he had to be the best of the rest of the midfield runners, and that's what he is in P5 because of Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez's problems as well. So great result for Lando Norris, and I could easily see him finishing in 5th. I think he's more likely to have better race pace than Pierre Gasly will in the AlphaTauri, if I'm going to be completely honest. The McLaren is a better car, and the race pace of the McLaren is also much better. So yeah, I think McLaren tomorrow could probably end up coming away with about 10 points. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But very good day for Lando Norris, continuing his stunning start to 2021. Great to see. But Daniel Ricciardo has got to step it up. He's got to step it up soon, because even though, I mean, the Spanish Grand Prix, of course, very good race, very good, even qualifying. And yeah, even in Imola, he out-qualified, you know, Lando Norris, and Bahrain out-qualified Lando Norris. But he never, in those weekends, he didn't out-qualify Lando, really, because he was quicker. He out-qualified Lando because Lando suffered from, say, circumstances. I mean, Bahrain, I think it was genuine, but, you know, Norris in the race was much quicker. Imola, the only reason Norris was out-qualified is because he had a lap time deleted. Portugal, Ricciardo's qualifying was abysmal. Did come back in the race, though, which was good for him, but again, his qualifying was abysmal. And in Spain, even though he did have a very good Grand Prix, the only reason he out-qualified Lando Norris is because Norris couldn't use a fresh set of tyres at the end of Q3 in Spain. If Norris could, Norris probably would have ended up 5th or 6th on the grid, with Ricciardo back in 7th or 8th. So Ricciardo does need to improve. He's not quite, I mean, I didn't think he would start off like really well or anything, but he's not quite where I thought he would be, which even if he's behind Lando Norris on pure pace, he's still not, Ricciardo, really doing anywhere near well enough. So yeah, he's, again, today, just nowhere near good enough. And going into Baku, because of, I mean, Ferrari at Baku are not going to be anywhere near as strong, in my view. I don't see Ferrari being up there with Mercedes and Red Bull at all, because the third sector and the first sector are such a disadvantage for Ferrari because of still their lack of power, that they're not going to be anywhere near those two. So you'd think probably in Baku, McLaren are probably going to have just about, maybe say them and AlphaTauri and Ferrari will probably be the three quickest midfield teams in Baku. But probably let's say McLaren as the quickest midfield team. Ricciardo can't afford to keep, letting this happen. He can't. He just cannot. I'd say in Baku, he's probably got to qualify, say, 9th at the minimum, at a track like that. So, we'll see what he can do. But I think Ricciardo, especially today, just simply wasn't good enough. And I know, again, he didn't get to the flag in time. I get that. But he should have had the pace beforehand. He should have had the pace beforehand to avert that disaster. Like I said with Sergio Perez, it's all great having the pace at the very end of the session, but if something happens, like a yellow flag or a red flag, or you miss a checkered flag or whatever, it doesn't matter. The people who do the best in qualifying are normally the people who are consistently quick throughout the session. That's why it's important to note people's pace through the session, even though they're going to get through into Q3. That's why it's always important to note how quick Verstappen is and Hamilton is through the session, because it helps determine how quick they'll be when they actually get to the part of qualifying where you see where they're going to finish up and start the race from. With Daniel Ricciardo, it never feels like he's consistently quick through a session. It almost feels like he labours through to Q3 sometimes and then just happens to end up in 7th or 8th place. I think his race pace, though, I will say, I think his race pace is much stronger than it was at the first couple races. I will say that, but his single lap speed at the minute is really off. Really, really off. And again, he needs to be 8th or 9th at the absolute worst in Baku. Can't afford to be having this again, because if he does, then McLaren's effort for third in the Constructors this season is mostly going to be on Lando Norris's shoulders, because Ricciardo, I mean, yeah, he had a great race in Spain, but that's the first proper good race he had this season. And Lando, is the reason McLaren are up in third right now. So, got to start pulling his weight, I think. But I think before we come to you guys in the chat, just going to quickly get into the sector times here in Monaco, because of course it does paint a good picture of what's going to happen tomorrow, but also why what happened today happened. So, Sector 1, not really that important in Monaco, because, I mean, it's only 3 corners, and mostly it's just acceleration, so it's not that important. I mean, you can see in Sector 1, Verstappen, Sainz, Bottas, Hamilton, Perez in the top 5 there. We'll say Carlos Sainz's first sector was a very, very good one, but mostly, I think because of how high speed the first sector is, you can really see there what I mean by when we come to a Baku, why Ferrari are not going to be quite as strong, because in the first sector, compared to how they do in the second and third sector, in the first sector, they're just not really there with Mercedes and Red Bull. But, when we then come into the second sector, you can see where Ferrari got pole today. And really, the second sector, the third sector as well is important. You've got the exit, the swimming pool chicane, Raskas and Anthony Nogues, and then the start-finish straight. It is important, but the most important, by far, sector of the track is Sector 2. It's by far the most important. I mean, you can see it's almost double the amount of time it takes to get through Sector 1 or Sector 3. It's so important. If you cannot get your car right through Sector 2, forget about it. You're going to have a bad Monaco Grand Prix. Look at Charles Leclerc. He's, half a tenth quicker than Valtteri Bottas? a tenth quicker than Carlos Sainz. Pierre Gasly as well. Look at that sector 2. Quicker Gasly than Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton, Perez. Great middle sector, you have to say, for Pierre Gasly. And then Charles Leclerc topping the final sector, just about from Max Verstappen. But the middle sector is really where it's at. And where the grip of the cars, how much grip they have, is really tested. And you'd have to say the Ferrari, in first and third in that sector. You'd have to say the Ferrari in terms of pure aerodynamic performance. The Ferrari this weekend is the best car, aerodynamically speaking. Overall, it's probably the Mercedes or the Red Bull. But around this circuit this weekend, with, it being so tight and twisty as we know, the Ferrari is the best car, as we can clearly see. I will say Pierre Gasly's middle sector, I do think, is a bit of an outlier. I don't think that is the true AlphaTauri performance. I think that's more so Gasly just having an absolutely stonking lap, to be honest. Ferrari in that middle sector are just, really, really good. Also, I think Mercedes' problems today, I think I think it was really the first and third sector. I mean, the first sector, not so much, because they were still... You can see both Mercedes were quicker, actually, than Charles Leclerc by about a tenth of a second in the first sector. But in terms of those parts of the circuit where the corners are not, coming at you thick and fast, they just didn't quite do so well there. Again, sector 3, you can see Mercedes only 4th and Hamilton down in, 11th or 12th place in sector 3. I just think in the slower corners, the Mercedes was not quite at it today, which is a surprise because I thought in the slower corners, Mercedes would be stronger, but they just weren't today. Mercedes in the slower corners were just not quite at it. In Sector 2, you do have slow corners. You have, of course, Mirabeau, the hairpin, then the corner right after the hairpin. But really, I'd say the majority of the corners in Sector 2, to be honest, I wouldn't even say Mirabeau's a slow corner. I think the majority of the corners in Sector 2 are mid-speed corners, and Mercedes in that sector tended to do a lot better. But in the slower, say, third sector, where you've got the exit, the swimming pool chicane, which of course is quick, then you've got 2 quite slow corners. For the pit straight, Mercedes just didn't seem to, have any tyres left or just grip left in general. Also, Red Bull, I think we can clearly see here the Red Bull, aerodynamically speaking, I still think is, the aerodynamics of their car is still weaker than, say, the power aspect that they have. Because you can see in the first sector, Red Bull are right there. But in the second and third sector, it's not quite as good as, say, Ferrari or even Mercedes in the middle sector. So I think Red Bull, again, they still have an advantage more so in high-speed stuff and, say, tracks with plenty of straights or a long straight. And that's why I say in Baku, I think Red Bull are going to be very strong. And then after that, I mean, Lando Norris... Really, in the final sector, especially, Lando Norris was so good. You can see there, third quickest in the final sector, which I think shows that Norris in the slow corners today was very good. But if we look at Daniel Ricciardo just wasn't really, in terms of where Norris was able to put his car in comparison to the people he was racing against, Ricciardo wasn't really doing exceedingly well, if you know what I mean, in any of the sectors. He was just kind of average in all of the sectors. It wasn't a bad lap, it wasn't a good lap either, it's just an average lap for Daniel Ricciardo. But yeah, I'd say aerodynamically speaking around this track this weekend, I'd probably say Ferrari first, and then honestly, I would say Mercedes second. I don't think Red Bull have as good of a car aerodynamically as Mercedes. I know today it was a bit of a struggle, but you can see in Sector 2, Bottas a tenth and a half quicker than Verstappen, and then even in Sector 3, he's only, 3-4 hundredths off, and Perez is quite low down as well. So I still think the Mercedes is slightly better aerodynamically than the Red Bull, but the Red Bull's still fine. And then the McLaren and AlphaTauri, by the looks of it, is kind of the same at the moment. We'll say the very slight advantage going towards McLaren. But yeah, overall, you have to say Ferrari definitely have the best car this weekend. It's not because of luck or whatever. I just think, again, Ferrari have the best car this weekend. And that's why I do think they will win the Grand Prix tomorrow. And I think what I'm going to do, guys, before I come to you guys in the chat for some comments and that, I'm just going to quickly round off the rest of the teams, and then I'll come to you guys for, say, a few minutes to answer some questions or whatever. Let me just, get into the rest of the team. So Sebastian Vettel in 8th for Aston Martin. Great result for him. I'm so happy for the guy. That result is... That could actually kick his season off. I mean, I know, of course, in Portugal, he got into the top 10, but it wasn't really a strong top 10 finish. I think this feels different. In the top 8, in a car that's not really supposed to be in the top 8 of this track, because it's not really well suited to this track. Him out-qualifying a Red Bull, his teammate, a McLaren, it just feels different, this, for Sebastian Vettel. I think Vettel tomorrow, honestly, will finish in the points. I think 8th or 9th is where he'll probably finish. I don't think the Aston Martin will make progress from that position, but I think, again, this really could kick his season off and make him kind of the focal point for the Aston Martin team. Because, like Red Bull, I think Aston Martin's strength is higher speed stuff because of the power unit they have and just the way their car is, aerodynamically speaking. I just, again, think Aston Martin are going to be stronger at more power-dominant circuits, which they have been really when they were racing point last year and the year before. So, with the races coming up, I mean, Baku, then of course we do have Paul Ricard, which is, aero is very important there. But after that, we have 2 races at the power-heavy Red Bull Ring, and then Silverstone, which is basically a power track now. So, I think for Aston Martin, this could, and for Sebastian Vettel, because the car is getting better, and it should come better as the season goes on, I think Sebastian's now going to kick on. I really hope he does, because I want to see Sebastian Vettel, doing well. He's not the Sebastian Vettel of old, but I want to see him still, I don't want to see him fade away and just be a shadow of his former self like Michael Schumacher was in the final 3 years of his career. I don't want to see that at all. I want Sebastian to be right in there, considering, how quick his car is. But today, he was phenomenal. He really was. Very happy for the guy. For Lance Stroll in 13th place, to be honest, considering his history around Monaco, not really a surprise, I'm afraid. But I think Aston Martin, at the absolute worst, they should be finishing in, say, 10th. At the absolute worst. But considering where he's starting the race from, it should be 8th or 9th. Hopefully, he can get a couple points for the team. And hopefully then after that, he should be able to kick on for the rest of the season. For AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly in 6th. Can I even find any more plaudits for this just brilliant French driver? After, getting dropped by Red Bull, and yeah, I did criticise him because, to be honest, I think he did deserve some criticism because I don't think he was quite at it at Red Bull. But ever since then, this guy has been just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. 6th place. 6th place in Monaco in a car that, let's be honest, is not that well suited to this circuit. I mean, I know Yuki Tsunoda is struggling a bit, but I don't think the car being the way it is helping him. I do think, for example, Yuki Tsunoda's performance will be helped in the next couple of races when the AlphaTauri comes to circuits which are better suited for it. But again, a top 6 qualifying position in an AlphaTauri. And by the way, that's his 3rd top 6 qualifying result of the season out of 5 races. In Bahrain and Imola, he was 5th. And then in Portugal, he was 9th, I think, or 10th. Spain, of course, was poor, but he did end up getting a point still. And now he's gone and put it in the top 6 in Monaco. Get this man a contract at a big team, please. This guy deserves it. Yes, I have said it. I know, again, when he was at Red Bull, I criticised him a bit because I did think his performances weren't quite up to par. I do think on reflection at Red Bull, I think a couple reasons why he didn't work out was, one, I don't think he was ready. I think he needed another year or two in the Toro Rosso / AlphaTauri. That's why that's a big reason, to be honest, why I think he didn't work out at the Red Bull team. Also, another reason was because the entire car is designed towards Max Verstappen's suitability. So you have to deal with basically Max Verstappen's driving style. That's why Gasly ultimately failed at Red Bull. A bit to do with himself, but a bit to do also with the way Red Bull operate. Now he's gone back to AlphaTauri and continued his development where he should have continued it anyway. Now look at what he's become. He's become one of the best on the grid. He's still at that level of last year. Last year, he was one of the top 5 best drivers in Formula 1. This season, probably the same. Probably the same. I'd say the only drivers ahead of him are probably Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc and Norris, say, so far this season. Because without Pierre Gasly, AlphaTauri would be absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And, I mean, Ocon, for example, has done pretty well at Alpine, and I don't think Alpine are going to, get rid of Fernando Alonso after a year. So, because of Ocon's good performances, to be honest, I think that Gasly could end up still being at this team for another 2 or 3 years. He could be, unless a spot becomes clearly available at, say, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull. I don't see him going to Red Bull again. I don't see it happening. I don't think, honestly, he wants to go to Red Bull again because he knows that the cards are already stacked against him from the moment he joins that team. The same, when Albon joined, and the same when Perez is, at the team. And you've got to realise that if you're going to join as Max Verstappen's teammate, you are there to support. You're not there to be the focal point of the team. That's just the way it is, I'm afraid. And I don't think Gasly wants to be that. I don't think Pierre Gasly deserves to be that. And yeah, get this man a contract with a big team or with, a car. Get him in a car that's good. A properly good car, not a midfield car. We need this guy at the front, fighting at the front of Formula 1 races. Because, he's won already a Grand Prix in spectacular manner. I reckon if you put him in a front-running car and he was given fair treatment, let's remember to say that. If he was given fair treatment, I think Pierre Gasly wins more than one race a season. I think he wins a few. And I think especially in qualifying, he'd have plenty of pole positions because the guy in qualifying is just on another level compared to his teammate and even other drivers in the midfield. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda, nothing really to say. He hasn't got any confidence. If you come to Monaco with no confidence, this is what you're going to get. 16th on the grid. If Yuki Tsunoda, this is one thing I will say, if Yuki Tsunoda doesn't get it together, he will be out of that team either during the season or at the end, because I can already hear Helmut Marko getting frustrated with the guy, because I think emotionally Yuki Tsunoda is not mature enough for Formula 1 right now. I think, honestly, Yuki Tsunoda, judging by how emotionally immature he is, I think Yuki Tsunoda probably, in hindsight, would have been better having another year in F2. Because he doesn't seem I mean, he does have potential, but he doesn't seem mentally and emotionally ready for Formula One right now. Kind of like Pierre Gasly when Pierre Gasly joined Red Bull, but not to the same extent, because Gasly is much more talented, has much more potential, and I don't think Gasly was as emotionally or mentally as much of a wreck as Yuki Tsunoda is. And, you know, with Tsunoda's, you know, say, mental or emotional problems he suffered from, I mean, of course, I've had my own mental and emotional problems in a completely different aspect in the last year or so, so I do want to tread carefully on this topic, but I think, considering what I know on the subject, considering my own problems and battles, I think the best thing would be... to be honest, I don't quite know absolutely what the best thing would be, because I'm thinking, you know, if you drop him mid-season, that's just going to hurt him mentally and emotionally even more. So it's hard to say what the absolute right thing for Yuki Tsunoda is, but what I think the key thing is he needs the pressure taking off. That's what he needs. He needs that pressure, which he clearly has, from himself, from the team, from Red Bull, from the media. There needs to be ways found where that pressure can be removed, because I think that's why he's been the way he is because he has pressure on himself, and there's lots of pressure from outside sources that he just isn't currently able to cope. So unless they can find a way of getting rid of that pressure, then the only other option I see is them getting rid of him mid-season or getting rid of him at the end of the season. And, you know, Alex Albon possibly being thrown in for the rest of the season, say if they do drop him mid-season. Yeah, to me, that's just what it seems like is the problem. I think it's just pressure. He's putting too much pressure on himself. And I think the reason he's putting too much pressure on himself is because of the pressure from above, from Red Bull, on his performances, because they obviously believe in him. They'd have to put him in their car, in their AlphaTauri car, not the Red Bull car, of course. And I just think, yeah, the pressure is really getting to him. So they just need to find ways to get that pressure off of him. Because I think if you take the pressure off him, I reckon he'd be much better. I reckon he'd be much better, and I reckon he'd perform better. And then once, you know, he starts performing better, gradually his confidence and mental strength would build. And then it would, you know, these problems he's having would get less and less. So, yeah, they just need to find a way to ease the pressure on him as much as possible. If they can't do that, though, then I think possibly taking him out and giving him some time basically back in F2, or maybe just on the sidelines, maybe that would work. But I would say first they need to try and just remove pressure on his performances, because it all seems a bit too... in terms of the expectation from himself and the team and others, it just seems all a bit too much, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, next up, Alpine, Esteban Ocon in P11, Fernando Alonso in P17. I mean, considering where they were in practice 3, Ocon, I thought, did pretty well, but Fernando Alonso in 17th place, the two-time Monaco Grand Prix winner, at... basically the back of the grid. How depressing. Fernando Alonso's qualifying has been abysmal this season. It continues to be abysmal, and his season so far just reminds me of Michael Schumacher in 2010, 2011, and 2012, where if you look at those years, Michael's qualifying pace, maybe not so much in 2012, but definitely in 2010 and 11 compared to Rosberg, who was his teammate at the time, his qualifying pace would be what let him down, because his race pace was still good enough. It was just his pace over a single lap was not cutting it. Same here. Exactly the same here. Fernando Alonso's single lap speed doesn't cut it. His race pace is fine. It's actually very good if you look at the races so far this season. But again, his single lap speed isn't enough, and it does need to improve. I don't know how it improves. I mean, the guy's very experienced, so you'd think he would know ways to improve it, but clearly nothing's working, so I don't know what to suggest, but I don't see this changing anytime soon. Fernando Alonso's poor qualifying performances. I will say, though, for Esteban Ocon, I do think he definitely can get ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi for 10th. It's going to be very close, though. Very close, because the Alfa Romeo are also very quick in that midfield, especially on race day. And, of course, he has Daniel Ricciardo behind him. So, if he does get a point, it'll be just that. Talking of Alfa Romeo, great result for this man on screen. Antonio Giovinazzi, P10, his first top 10 starting position in a Grand Prix, I believe, since the 2019 Italian Grand Prix. So, great result for the Italian. Very happy for the guy. And around Monaco, it's pretty important, as we know, to have a good qualifying for your race result. And he's been pretty good in qualifying this season, but just on race day has lacked speed compared to, say, his teammate. I think his race pace has improved, but again, he just hasn't quite had enough in the races. But because of his grid position and how he actually, at the start of races, does tend to gain positions, I would be surprised if he wasn't in the points tomorrow. I'd be surprised. Kimi Räikkönen 14th. I mean, what is there to say? Kimi Räikkönen just cannot get qualifying right at all. He just can't do it. Same problem as Fernando Alonso. Just can't get it together over a single lap, which is a shame. But I would say right now that Alfa Romeo, this is probably, solely because of the track we're at, their best chance for a points finish. I mean, of course, Bahrain and Imola, they were very good, and they were even close to starting in the top 10 even. But solely because of the grid position, I think they will get it tomorrow, and I hope they do. And then finally is the Williams team, and Williams 15th and 18th. That's okay. This track's just not a good track for them, so nothing really could be expected of the Williams team. I will say, though, again, great for Russell to get into the second part of qualifying. And, of course, Haas F1 ended up at the back. But, yeah, there you go, guys. That's it for this race preview. Let me just quickly read out some final comments. Let me find some good ones before I go. Mecca says Yuki needs to just drive, focus on himself. Gasly is expected to beat him. He just needs to pick up points here and there. Yeah, just, again, finding ways to take the pressure off. I think maybe in his head, or maybe he gets that pressure from above, but there's clearly a felt need that he needs to finish in a certain position. And because he's not doing it, clearly, that's leading to what it's led to. I would say, I mean, tomorrow, he's not going to finish in the points tomorrow. He's going to finish nowhere tomorrow. Baku, where I think AlphaTauri will be quicker, because Baku is a similar-ish track to, say, Bahrain, where, of course, AlphaTauri are very quick. And AlphaTauri, I think they're going to be stronger at the higher speed circuits rather than the tight, twisty tracks that we've seen so far. I mean, again, in Baku, they should be stronger. And I would say Yuki Tsunoda should probably aim in qualifying to be around, say, 12th, 13th on the grid, which, of course, would be an improvement on his last, say, 3 qualifying sessions. So at least that would be an improvement. And then, you know, in the race, because of the Honda's good power and because the AlphaTauri is a good race car, you know, gently make progress and then end up nicking a couple points. I mean, I made it sound simple, but for Formula 1 drivers, it's not as difficult, of course, for them as it is or would be for us. But, you know, I think he just needs to start just aiming for kind of smaller things. So, again, in Baku, just aim for like a 12th or 13th place qualifying. And then in the race, say 9th or 10th, probably 9th at best, like he had in Bahrain. And then, if he gets that, let's say he has that, 12th in qualifying, 9th in the race, which is basically what he did in Bahrain. That's a good weekend. That takes the pressure off. That gives him confidence. That gives him some sort of momentum. At the minute, he's just in this complete downward spiral where he's trying so hard but is getting nowhere because of this expectation that he's got to be at this level right now, when he should just be focusing to get his foot in the door in the sport rather than just, coming in and thrashing everyone. People, I've seen, say, with Toro Rosso before, with Max Verstappen coming in and being so great in that, but even with really great drivers, it takes time for people to to get their act together, say in Formula 1. Look at Sebastian Vettel. I mean, I know the Toro Rosso car wasn't great, but it took Vettel in the Toro Rosso about a year to really start outperforming the car and performing at a really, say, high level that the team noticed. And of course, that led to the Red Bull promotion, and the rest is history. But, it takes drivers time sometimes. They don't just come into Formula 1 and thrash everyone and then win the championship. They're not Lewis Hamilton, winning the championship in their second season. Again, it takes time. It takes time for these things to happen. I'm just trying to think on the grid now. I mean, you could look at Lando Norris even. I mean, Lando Norris, of course, this season has been one of the best drivers on the grid. So definitely, at the very least, top 5. Lando's first season, of course, was helped by how good the car was compared to how it was in 2018. But Lando in 2018 compared to now, sorry, not 2018, 2019 compared to now, Lando was nowhere near as good as he is now, back in 2019. In 2019, he had, 4 or 5 good races. The rest were, considering where the car was pace-wise, they were average in Formula 1 terms. And again, he didn't need to have this amazing season. And as you can see, since then, there's been a clear progression from Lando Norris ever since 2019. And now look at him. He's performing at a very high level and is one of the most exciting looking drivers on the grid. That could be Yuki Tsunoda if he can get his act together in the next few races, which I think if he does, then it'll, help keep him in the sport, definitely. But I would say, honestly, in Baku, considering how quick the AlphaTauri car should be, I think he should be getting into the points in Baku. And I think if he did, it would give him not a lot, but some confidence going forward. So let's hope, that can happen for him. Right, I'll read this final comment from, I think it's Olaf, who says, Verstappen just needs to focus on his race and drive it home, not to take too much risks in the first corner. And he finishes second, he will take some good points off of Lewis Hamilton. Absolutely. Like I said, if Hamilton finishes where he does, or where he starts, even if Max finishes second, that's a very good result for the championship, because he then takes the lead down to 2 points. And if he gets the fastest lap, then it'll be 1 point the lead is down to. And then again, in Baku, I expect him to be probably the favourite in Baku for, say, pole and victory. So, yeah, big day tomorrow for Max Verstappen. Could actually be a turning point in the World Championship. We'll have to see, though, what happens tomorrow in the Monaco Grand Prix. But, guys, don't forget to join me and Nib tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. UK time for the race watch along for the 2021 Monaco Grand Prix. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. or you can go to my channel page and do it there and hit the notifications bell as well for that stream tomorrow. Don't forget as well to smash the like button on this video and share this video and channel everywhere you can. And as well, don't forget to join my Discord server. Link below in the description. Best place, probably, I'd say, for notifications for my videos and streams. And also, we've got almost 500 people in that server. And it is pretty active during just the year in general, whether it's Formula 1 season or not. But guys, until tomorrow's 2021 Monaco Grand Prix from the streets of Monte Carlo, the most prestigious, you have to say, race in the world, it's been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.